These are 5 ways on how you can start to raise your standards. 1, get crystal clear on what your values are. As you know, values are the principles and beliefs that shape and guide our behaviors and decisions, as well as reflect our identity. And there are different values that we create in our life, such as our personal values, our social values, our cultural values, our relational values. So you will want to get really specific on all those areas of your life, what your values are. And 2, this will make sense, but once you get crystal clear on your values, you also want to get clear on the direction that you're headed. Because I always say, our standards dictate the quality of life we create. So before I move on to the 3 other ways on how you can start to set your standards, I want to share a little bit about why I'm so passionate about this and how I started to understand and set clear standards, because I realized that I actually was setting high expectations in my relationships, mainly in my romantic relationships, but as well as other aspects of my life, including with friends, my family, and even on myself. And all these high expectations that I set was actually creating a lot of my own suffering and disappointment, because I had this should be belief of how others should do, say, or act, etc. in my head. And when it didn't unfold in the way that I thought it should be, that's when it had created all that disappointment and suffering. And it actually created this negative repeating cycle that was happening in all of my relationships. So I had to step away, get really clear, and see why these negative patterns were happening. And then I really understood it was linked to setting expectations. But the good news is you can set high standards for yourself without setting high expectations or any expectations at all, because the 2 are often conflated, and expectations lead to suffering, while standards reflect the quality of life you create. So moving on, the 3rd way on how you can raise your standard is learning how to say no and setting boundaries. This is so important, and it will make sense once you get really clear on your values and the direction that you're headed. It will get so much easier on discerning those opportunities, those things, those people that don't align with your values and the standards that you start to set and the direction that you're headed. And a lot of us struggle with saying no and setting boundaries is because we're not clear on our values and how to set boundaries. And there are so many other fears that are holding you back. And if you're unsure and curious on what those fears are because you're struggling with how to say no, I made a video recently about it, and I will link to it here. So number 4, once you learn how to say no and set those boundaries, you will want to learn how to be okay with it. See, there's a lot of us who struggle with saying no and setting boundaries. As I said, there's a lot of fear that is holding us back, and we will feel guilty, ashamed, and uncomfortable because once we start to put into practice something that we've never done before, of course, it's going to be a little uncomfortable. It's going to be a little awkward. It's going to feel weird. But once you start to put things into practice, you will learn it is okay to say no. And learning to be okay with it is absolutely also essential to learning how to raise your standards. And number 5, this I believe is the most important, and it is to uphold your standards. Because there's a famous saying by John Dryden, we first make our habits and then our habits make us. So, as I said, standards dictate the quality of life we create. And if we don't put into practice these strategies and these action steps to uphold them on a regular basis, where we need to put it into practice, then we're not going to be able to create the quality of life that we want for our future self. So just saying no once or setting your boundary once and not letting your own actions in your everyday life reflect your own standards, then you're actually telling the world that you actually are not putting into practice on how to raise and uphold those standards. So I hope this has been helpful and valuable to understand how you can start to raise your standards and again, uphold them. If it did, please let me know in the comments below or subscribe. It will really help us out here. And before you go, I want to share something really exciting that if you watch this far, I think you will be intrigued or interested in. So as I shared with you in a little bit, why I'm so passionate about this topic is because I personally went on this self-discovery journey of a lot of the pain I went through. I've now created a course on what this all means, how to differentiate between standards and expectations, how you can have standards that create the quality of life you create without having expectations, and how you can start to set clear standards for your life. So if you are interested in this upcoming course, I will have a link below to sign up for you to be notified when it launches very, very soon. So I hope that I will get to speak to many of you. And if you have any questions, please also drop them in the comments below, and I will see you next time.